crazy old woman, open up!" The voice cut through the air like a rusty blade, making my blood freeze in my veins. The doorbell wouldn't stop ringing, a shrill and desperate sound that echoed through the house like an inverted cry for help. My grandchildren, Lucas, 8 years old, and Marina, 6, were sitting on the couch, their eyes wide with terror, the remote control slipping from their small, trembling hands. The cartoon kept playing on the television, but the children's laughter had died, replaced by a heavy and suffocating silence. "Grandma," Lucas whispered, his small voice lost in the chaos of screams coming from the street. "Who is it?" I knew exactly who it was. After 40 years, 40 long years building this fortress of peace, he had returned. Claude, my ex-husband, the man everyone believed to be dead, whom I myself had declared dead to the world and to myself. But there was his voice, rough from alcohol and time, pouring poison through the solid wood door that I always kept locked with 3 deadbolts. "Marina, Lucas, come here, quick." My voice came out firmer than I expected, masking the earthquake that had settled in my chest. The children ran to me, clinging to my legs like small castaways grabbing onto a life preserver. Their warm and sweaty hands reminded me of what was at stake. It wasn't just about me. It never was just about me. "Helen, I know you're in there." His voice pierced the walls like a drill. 40 years, Helen. 40 years you owe me." The floor seemed to sway under my feet. How had he found me? How had he discovered where I lived? And why now? Just now, when I thought I had finally built something beautiful over the ashes of the past. I took the children to the back bedroom, away from the front door, away from his voice. "Stay here," I ordered, trying to sound calm. "No matter what happens, don't leave this room." "But Grandma," "No buts." I closed the door and leaned a chair under the handle. My hands trembled like leaves in the wind, but my determination was solid as granite. He wouldn't touch them, never. I returned to the living room, where the screaming continued. I sat in my rocking chair, the one that had consoled me through so many lonely nights, and closed my eyes. The memories came like a flood, carrying me back in time, to the 25-year-old woman I had been. It was 1985. I was pregnant with my second daughter, Carol, my round belly pressing against my floral apron while I prepared dinner. Claude had come home later than usual, his breath heavy with beer and anger, always anger. Little Anna, then 3 years old, was playing on the kitchen floor with rag dolls I had sewn myself. "Where's my dinner?" he roared, and I felt the familiar tightening in my stomach. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. "It's ready, honey," I replied, serving the plate with hands that already trembled in anticipation. But it wasn't about the food. It never was about the food. "Ready." He grabbed the plate and hurled it against the wall. The sound of the dishes shattering made Anna cry. "This isn't food. This is garbage. You're useless, Helen." The words cut deeper than any knife, but it was his fists that left visible marks, first on my face, then on my arms, finally on my rounded belly. Anna screamed in the corner, a small witness to violence no child should see. "Stop, please," I begged, protecting my belly with my hands. "The baby? The baby?" He laughed, a cruel and empty sound. "Maybe I'm doing a favor, one more useless mouth to feed." That night, I bled. Carol was born premature 2 weeks later, small and fragile, fighting to survive. The doctors said she would have lasting effects, developmental problems for life. Looking at that small defenseless being in the incubator, I promised I would never again allow him to hurt us. But promises are easier to make than keep. For the next 15 years, I lived in a glass prison. On the outside, we were the perfect neighborhood family. Claude, the dedicated worker, me, the devoted wife, Anna and Carol, the obedient daughters. Inside, we lived in hell. He was smart. He knew exactly where to hit to not leave visible marks. He knew which words to use to destroy me inside, keeping the facade intact outside. "No one would ever believe you," he would whisper in my ears when he left me on the kitchen floor sobbing. "Look at you. Who would want something like that?" I believed it. For years I believed I deserved every punch, every humiliation, every night sleeping on the couch because he had locked the bedroom door. The girls grew up thinking that was normal, that all fathers yelled, that all mothers cried hidden in the bathroom. Anna became shy and withdrawn, always trying to be invisible so as not to awaken her father's wrath. Carol, with her learning difficulties, was his favorite target. "Stupid like her mother," he would say, and I would see the light going out in my little daughter's eyes. The turning point came on a stormy night in 2000. Carol had knocked over a glass of milk during dinner, and Claude exploded. But this time, it was different. This time, he didn't go after me, he went after her. "You useless girl," he screamed, grabbing the 15-year-old by the arm. "Can't even hold a glass right." "Claude, no." I threw myself between them, but he pushed me so hard I hit my head against the wall. "Today you're going to learn not to be an idiot like your mother," he said, dragging Carol to the bedroom. Anna started screaming. I got up, dizzy, blood streaming from my forehead. That's when I saw the kitchen knife on the counter. My hand closed around the handle as if it had a will of its own. Not to hurt him. Never to hurt him. Just to protect my daughter. Let her go. My voice sounded different, lower, more dangerous. Claude turned, saw the knife in my hands, and laughed. You're going to threaten me? He let go of Carol and walked toward me. You don't have the courage to kill a cockroach, let alone. Let her go, I repeated, and this time he stopped. There was something in my eyes he had never seen before, something that made him take a step back. Have you gone crazy? No, I woke up. That night, after he fell asleep drunk on the couch, I took the girls and fled. I didn't take anything but the clothes on our bodies and the savings I had hidden under Carol's mattress for years. 5-cent coins, crumpled $1 bills, money I hid every time there was change from the grocery shopping. My freedom cost $342. We went to my sister Miriam's house on the other side of town. She welcomed us without questions, her silent anger more eloquent than 1,000 words. You should have come before, was all she said, hugging the girls as if she wanted to protect them from all the storms in the world. Claude looked for us. For weeks he appeared in places where we might be, at the girls' school, at the market, at church, always with flowers, always with apologies, always with promises. It was just a moment of weakness, he would say. I've changed, Helen. Come home. But I had discovered something in those first days of freedom, what it was like to sleep without fear, what it was like to wake up without anxiety eating at my stomach, what it was like to see my daughters laugh for real, not that nervous and forced laugh they used when he was around. I got a job at a bakery, getting up at 4 in the morning to knead bread. It was hard work, but honest. Every dollar I earned was mine. Every decision I made was mine. For the first time in 15 years, I existed. The girls flourished. Anna began to talk more, to make friends at the new school. Carol, with patience and love, began to overcome her difficulties. I discovered it wasn't stupidity, as he always said. It was just a different way of learning, and when someone cared enough to teach the right way, she was brilliant. 2 years later, the news came. Claude had died in a car accident, driving drunk on a dark road. The police said it was instantaneous. There was no funeral, there were no tears, just an immense relief, as if a 15-year weight had finally been removed from my shoulders. He can't hurt us anymore, I said to the girls that night, hugging them in the small apartment we had rented. It was just a room and a half, but it was ours, never again, and he didn't hurt us. For 40 years we built a new life. Anna became a teacher, married a gentleman named Robert, and gave me 2 wonderful grandchildren. Carol, my special warrior, opened a small craft shop where her unique creations found admirers and loyal customers. She never married, but she was happy, and that was all that mattered. I continued at the bakery until I retired, but I always kept a small garden in the backyard. Tomatoes, lettuce, some flowers. Plants responded to love the same way people did, with growth, with beauty, with abundant life. If you've made it this far in this story, I ask you to subscribe to continue following accounts like this, where I share the deepest lessons life has taught me. Each story is a window into the strength that exists within each of us. We bought this house when Anna got married, a small 2-story house on a quiet street. It was modest, but it had something our old house never had: peace. The walls didn't hold memories of screams, the corners didn't hide tears. It was a house where people laughed, where children played without fear, where love grew like the plants in my garden. The grandchildren came as late blessings. Lucas and Marina spent weekends with me, filling the house with happy noise and creative mess. I taught them to make bread. They taught me to play video games. We made star-shaped cookies and told stories before bedtime. Beautiful stories, where heroes always won and princesses saved themselves. We never talked about Claude. For them, he was just an absence, a grandfather they had lost before being born. Anna and Carol decided that some truths were too heavy to be carried by such small shoulders. I agreed, but secrets have a life of their own. They grow in darkness, feed on silence, and one day, inevitably, find a way to escape. Helen, I know you're in there. His voice brought me back to the present with violence. How was he alive? The accident, the death, had it all been a lie, or had he faked his own death during all these years? I got up from the rocking chair, my legs shaky. From the back room I could hear Lucas and Marina whispering, their small voices loaded with fear. I walked to the front window, hiding behind the curtain to observe. He was older, of course, gray hair, face marked by time and alcohol, but the eyes were the same, small, cruel, full of anger that time had not healed. He wore dirty clothes, smelled bad even from a distance. There was something of a wild animal about him, something of a man who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. 40 years, Helen, he shouted again. 40 years you owe me. You ruined my life. I ruined his life? The irony was bitter on my tongue, but then I understood. In his twisted mind I was to blame, for having fled. for having taken the daughters, for having built a happy life while what had happened to him during all these years? Open that door or I'll break it down. I thought of the children in the back room, of Anna, who should arrive in an hour to pick them up, of Carol, who was traveling for work, of all the beautiful life we had built over the ashes of the past. No, not at all. I went to the phone and dialed the police. But when the operator answered, my voice failed. How to explain? My ex-husband, who we all thought was dead for 40 years, is at my door threatening to break in. Who would believe it? I hung up the phone and walked to the door. 3 security deadbolts, a chain, a high-quality lock. I had turned this house into a fortress. But fortresses can become prisons when the enemy is outside. Claude, I said, resting my forehead against the cold wood. My voice crossed the door like a blade. Go away. The silence that followed was more frightening than the screams. Then, his voice, lower, more dangerous. Helen, my dear wife, you haven't changed at all. Always bossy, always thinking you command me. Go, away. I can't, you see. I spent 40 years planning this moment. 40 years thinking about what I would do when I found you. My blood turned to ice. The children have nothing to do with this. Children, he laughed, and the sound reminded me of glass shards rolling on the floor. Ah yes, the little grandkids. Anna told me all about them. Anna, impossible. Anna would never. But then I understood. He had been watching, studying, planning. For how long? Weeks, months, years. You know what hurts me most, Helen? His voice was closer now, as if he were leaning against the other side of the door. It's that you succeeded. You managed to be happy. You managed to raise the girls. You managed to have a good life. While you what? While I lived under bridges. While I begged for food. While I lost everything. Everything because of you. Guilt tried to infiltrate my chest like toxic smoke, but I expelled it. No, not after so much time. Not after so much growth. You lost everything because of your own choices, I replied, surprising myself with the firmness of my voice. I just saved myself, and saved my daughters. Your daughters. The scream was so loud it made the house windows tremble. They're my daughters too. In the back room I heard Marina cry. Lucas tried to console her, his 8-year-old voice trying to be brave. Don't cry, Marina. Grandma will take care of us. Yes, I would. I walked to the kitchen and grabbed my cell phone. But instead of calling the police, I called Anna. Mom? Good. I was just leaving to pick up the children. Anna, listen carefully. Don't come home. Not now. What happened? How to tell a daughter that the father she believed to be dead had resurrected like a vengeful ghost. Your father is alive. He's here. The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Anna, that's impossible, Mom. He died. We went to the wake. You remember? The coffin was closed. But the coffin was closed, I repeated, and pieces of a puzzle began to form in my mind. Anna, are you sure he was dead? The death certificate, the documents. Mom, he's been dead for 40 years. But I knew, deep in my heart, that he had never really died. Not really. Men like Claude don't die easily. They're like weeds, always finding a way to come back, always adapting, always surviving. Call Carol, I ordered. Tell her, and call the police. Say there's a disturbed man at my door, threatening to enter. Mom, I'll know. You're not coming here. You have to protect Robert. He might go after you too. I hung up before she could protest. Outside, Claude had stopped screaming. The silence was worse. Silence meant he was thinking, planning. I returned to the room where the children were hiding. Lucas was hugging Marina, both curled up on the bed like little birds in a storm. Grandma, Marina whispered when she saw me. Why is that man screaming? How to explain 40 years of history to a 6-year-old child? How to talk about violence, about fear, about the need to sometimes lock doors and hide. Sometimes I began, sitting on the bed and pulling them into my lap. People who aren't good try to hurt us. When that happens, the smartest thing to do is protect ourselves. Like in movies? Lucas asked, when the good guy hides from the bad guy? Exactly like in movies. And you're the good guy, Grandma? I looked into those innocent eyes, full of absolute confidence that I could protect them from anything. For the first time in 40 years, I felt like a heroine. Yes, I replied, I'm the good guy. The noise came without warning, glass shattering, wood breaking. He had broken the kitchen window. Stay here, I whispered, pushing the chair harder against the door. No matter what happens, don't leave this room. Grandma, promise. I promise, Lucas said, and Marina nodded vigorously. I left the room and locked the door from the outside, putting the key in my pocket. Whatever confrontation was coming, they would be safe. I returned to the living room, where I could hear him struggling to get through the broken window. He wasn't young anymore, and 40 years on the streets had taken their toll. But hate can give strength to weak men, and he had 40 years of accumulated hate. When he finally managed to get in, we stood face to face for the first time in 4 decades. He was smaller than I remembered, more fragile. Time had been cruel to him, carving deep furrows in his face, bending his shoulders, but the eyes were exactly the same. Helen. He said my name like a dark prayer. My dear wife, ex-wife, and you're dead, legally dead. He laughed, that terrible sound I knew so well. Dead. You think I would die and let you live happily ever after? You know me better than that. The accident. There was no accident, just a desperate man who paid another vagrant to take his place in a car. The body was so destroyed no one asked questions. He walked through the living room as if it were his house, touching things, examining the life I had built. 40 years, Helen. 40 years watching you from afar. Terror settled in my chest like ice. You were watching us? Every birthday of the girls, every graduation, every wedding. He picked up a photo of Anna on her wedding day, his dirty finger tracing her face in the glass. They turned out beautiful, grew up well without their father. They grew up well without violence. Violence. He stared at me, genuinely surprised. I was never violent. I was just a man trying to keep his family in line. It was incredible how he had rewritten history in his mind. 40 years, and he still couldn't see the truth of what he had done. You beat us, I said simply. You beat me. You beat the children. I disciplined them. There's a difference. Discipline doesn't leave bruises. You were always dramatic. He put the photo back in place, but upside down, a small act of cruelty. I always had a choice, I replied, walking to the bookshelf where I kept family albums. It just took me 15 years to realize it. I took an envelope that was hidden behind the books. Inside, documents I had kept all these years, hoping for a day I hoped would never come. Do you know what this is, Claude? I showed the papers yellowed by time. He frowned, trying to read from a distance. These are photographs of the marks you left on me. Medical reports from times I went to the hospital. Testimonies from neighbors who heard the screams but never had the courage to interfere. My voice was firm, controlled. For years I gathered evidence. I kept every proof of your violence. His face paled. That was 40 years ago. Statute of limitations, maybe, but do you think the press cares about statute of limitations? Channel 7 has a program about domestic violence that airs every Thursday. They would love a story like this. Violent husband fakes own death, resurfaces after 40 years to terrorize family. He took a step back, and for the first time since he had entered my house, I saw fear in his eyes. You wouldn't do that, wouldn't I? Do you know me so well after 40 years? I grabbed my cell phone. One call, one simple call, and tomorrow your photo will be in every newspaper in the city. The man who beat his pregnant wife, the father who terrorized his own daughters. Helen, you said you have liver cancer. 6 months to live. Do you want to spend those 6 months being recognized on the street as the monster you always were? Do you want people to spit on your grave? His hands trembled. 40 years on the streets, but there was still something in him that feared public judgment. Men like him were always cowards at heart. But I have a better proposal, I continued, putting the documents back in the envelope. You leave my house now, disappear from our lives forever, and in return, I don't destroy what little dignity you still have. And if I refuse, then you discover how much I've changed in these 40 years. I walked to the kitchen, where he had broken the window to enter. Glass shards were scattered on the floor, shining under the afternoon light. I picked up the largest one, feeling its weight in my hand. Do you know what moment everything changed for me? I asked, returning to the living room. It was that night when you went after Carol, when I realized you were never going to stop, that you were going to destroy my daughters the same way you tried to destroy me. He stared fixedly at the piece of glass in my hand. That night, I grabbed a knife, not to hurt you, but to defend myself. And I discovered something interesting. When you have a weapon in your hand, even if you never intend to use it, you feel different, stronger, more determined. Helen, you're scaring me. Good, you scared me for 15 years. It's fair. The sound of sirens began to echo in the distance, approaching rapidly. The police were coming. You really called them, he said, incredulous. I did. And when they get here, you have 2 options. Either you're leaving through the front door like a civilized man who came to visit and decided to leave, or you're being carried away in handcuffs for home invasion. The sirens were closer now. Lucas and Marina must be hearing them too, probably imagining that the good guys were coming to save the day. Helen, please, I'm dying. I don't want to die alone. For the first time since he had entered the house, I felt a stab of something like pity, but then I remembered the nights I spent in the hospital, explaining to skeptical doctors that I had fallen down the stairs again. I remembered Carol at 15, crying because she believed she was stupid like her father said. I remembered Anna, always shy, always afraid to make noise. You chose to die alone the day you first raised your hand to me. I replied, every choice has consequences, Claude. You're reaping what you sowed. The sirens stopped in front of the house. Quick steps in the garden. Male voices organizing. Police, open the door. I looked at Claude one last time. He seemed smaller now, shrunken, a pathetic old man who had wasted his entire life feeding hate and bitterness. Your choice, I said, dignity or humiliation. He looked at the front door,
then at the broken window through which he had entered, calculating his options. 40 years on the streets had taught him when to flee. "This isn't over," he whispered, but his voice had no more strength. It was the empty threat of a defeated man. "Yes," I replied with absolute certainty. "It's over." He walked to the broken window, hesitated for a moment, then left the same way he had entered. I heard his footsteps in the backyard, then the gate closing. He had disappeared into the afternoon like a nightmare that finally ends. I took a deep breath, put away the piece of glass, and went to open the door for the police officers. "Ma'am, we received a call about home invasion. There was a misunderstanding," I explained, trying to sound calm. "An acquaintance came to visit me. We had an argument, but he's already gone." The older officer looked at the broken kitchen window. "He left through the window. It's complicated. He has some mental problems. Sometimes he gets confused about which is the front door." It wasn't a complete lie. 40 years of feeding hate had certainly affected his sanity. The officers made some notes, recommended that I install security cameras, and left. When their sirens disappeared in the distance, I finally allowed my knees to tremble. I ran to the back room and unlocked the door. Lucas and Marina were hugging on the bed, eyes wide. "Grandma, did the police arrest the bad man?" "The bad man went away," I replied, hugging them tightly, "and he's never coming back." "How do you know?" "Because," I said, kissing each one's forehead, "some battles you only need to fight once." That night, after Anna came to get the children, and I told an edited version of what had happened, I sat alone in my rocking chair. The house was silent, but it was a different silence from what I knew. It was no longer the silence of fear, of waiting, of hiding. It was the silence of peace. Claude never came back. I learned later, through an anonymous call from social services, that he had died 3 months later in a downtown shelter. Alone, as he had chosen to live. I didn't go to the funeral. There was nothing to mourn. Anna never knew the whole truth about that day. I told her that her father had appeared, that he was mentally disturbed, that he had left when he realized he wasn't welcome. She was shaken for weeks, but eventually life resumed its normal course. Carol reacted differently when she found out. "I always suspected," she said. "There was always something strange about that death, but I didn't want to believe he was capable of deceiving us for so long." "He was always capable of anything," I replied. "That's why we had to be stronger than him." 6 months later, I moved to a smaller, more modern apartment with an electronic security system. Not because I was afraid, fear had died along with Claude, but because I deserved to live in a place that was completely mine, without ghosts or bad memories. Lucas and Marina continued visiting, now even more attached to the grandmother who had scared away the bad man. They didn't know the details, but they knew I had protected them, and that was enough. 2 years later, Anna gave me another granddaughter, Sophia, a rosy and laughing baby who screamed with impressive force. "She's going to be strong like her grandmother," Anna said, placing the girl in my arms. Looking at that small and determined little face, I thought about the generations of women in our family. My mother, who had faced poverty with dignity. Me, who had faced violence with courage. Anna, who had become a dedicated educator. Carol, who had transformed her differences into art. And now Sophia, who would grow up in a world where no man would ever raise a hand to her. No, I would tell her she's stronger than she imagines, braver than she believes, more valuable than anyone ever told her, and most importantly, I would tell her she deserves to be happy. My house doorbell now rings only with happy sounds. Grandchildren arriving for visits, neighbors coming for coffee, delivery people bringing books I ordered online. I never again heard screams from outside the door. I never again felt fear hearing footsteps in the hallway. Because I learned, finally, that true power doesn't come from controlling others, or inspiring fear. It comes from knowing your own worth, and not allowing anyone to diminish it. It comes from building a life so authentic and full that you become unbreakable. It comes from discovering that you were never a victim. You are always the heroine of your own story. And this, my story, doesn't end with a frightened woman locked in her house, hiding from the past. It ends with a free woman, standing in her sunny kitchen, teaching her 3-year-old great-granddaughter to make star-shaped cookies. "Grandma," Sophia asks, her small hands covered with flour, "why do you always make star cookies?" "Because," I reply, helping her cut the dough, "stars shine even in the dark. And I want you to always remember that you can shine too, no matter what happens around you." She smiles, satisfied with the answer, and returns to playing with the dough. She doesn't know yet that this is the most important lesson I can teach, that inside each of us exists a light that no darkness can extinguish, that we are all stars, just waiting for the opportunity to shine. And when our house door opens now, it's always to let in more light, more love, more life, never again to let in fear. Because some battles, when truly won, don't need to be fought again. And freedom, once conquered, is a treasure no one can steal.